Welcome back, Midnight Readers. We are jumping right back into Once Upon a Fall, where our main character, Shelly, has agreed to embark on her first ever road trip to Vermont to engage in a paranormal investigation. And she's being accompanied by her best friend and his older brother, who is also like a brother to her, as well as the older brother's friend. They've made it to their destination so far, and things have gotten a little bit tense with the guy who is hosting them, which is the best friend's brother's friend, his cousin. So the cousin seems like a nice guy, but the best friend's brother, the friend that has invited them, he kind of seemed to flip a switch. He's gone from being like what was supposed to be a cool guy going on this trip to kind of cheer up his cousin to being kind of a dick, honestly. So yeah, right now weird stuff's starting to happen. Shelly went to sleep in the new room for the first time and was kept awake all night by footsteps going by her door. However, she's towards the end of a hall, so she can't figure out who or why, or she can't make any sense out of it why that would have been happening. And meanwhile, her best friend is starting to act a little strange too. And the icing on the cake here is she had gone on a walk with the guy who was hosting them, Noah, and she saw 4 mounds of dirt piled up by a beautiful garden out there. But she's like, "What's that?" And he's like, "Oh, that's where my parents are buried." And she's like, "Okay, so is it like a family, cemetery?" And he's like, "No." And then he just walks away. And she's like, "Okay, who or what are in the other graves?" So yeah, that's where we're at. We are picking back up at chapter 5. Ready? Here we go. I must have fallen asleep at some point, as next thing I knew, I awoke to rays of the early morning light dancing across the room. I excitedly got ready. Today was the day of the paranormal investigation. Sure, I was a little nervous, but my current excitement was trumping that fear by far. Just then, there was a knock on my door. It was Ben. "Morning. Just wanted to make sure you were up. Nick and I are heading out to load the car up. Can you check and make sure that Blake is getting ready and didn't go back to sleep in a few minutes?" I laughed. Sure, not a problem. It wasn't more than a minute later when there was another knock on my door. Forget something?" I teased, opening my door up again. And Noah sported a confused look as he cocked his head to the side. "Expecting someone else?" "Oh, sorry, Ben had just stopped by. I thought he may have forgotten to tell me something and had come back." "Gotcha. I just wanted to bring you a fresh muffin before the guys devour them all. And to ask you to please be careful today. Keep your eyes and ears open at all times." Thanks for the muffin. It looks delicious. And I'll do my best to stay alert. But I am a bit tired. You guys walking around in the hall all night made it a little difficult to sleep." "Walking around in the hall? Must have been someone else. I stayed in my room all night last night." "You did? Must have been the guys." "Like I said, stay sharp today." "Will do. And don't worry. I'm sure the guys will help look after me too," I said reassuringly. "I'm sure some of them will. However, a smart girl would stay sharp and not be overly trusting." I raised a brow questioningly. However, he didn't elaborate as I had hoped. "Here, keep this with you," he said, handing me a switchblade with a N.L. engraved on the bottom. I looked up at him surprised. "Please take it. It'll make me feel better." "Okay, thanks," I said, slipping it into my back pocket, not sure what to think. With that, he disappeared back downstairs. Remembering my conversation with Ben, I went to check on Blake. A shirtless Blake opened the door. "Oh, good, you're up," I said, forcing myself not to stare. "Yep, be ready in 5. How about you?" "Oh, I'm already ready." "Oh, shoot. No, I'm not. Forgot my phone. I'll be right back." As I entered my room, I immediately spotted my phone on the bed. On the bed? I was positive I had left it on the dresser. Just then, something on the dresser caught my eye in the exact same place my phone had been. It was a bracelet. The bracelet was silver with a white pearl flower dangling from it. Beside it sat a note. It read, "A beautiful trinket for a true beauty." Who had snuck into my room and done this? Although I'm sure it had been meant to be a sweet gesture, something about it struck me as kind of creepy. Perhaps it was knowing that someone had waited until the exact moment that I left to sneak into my room that wasn't sitting right with me. And why would they have moved my phone? Could it have been Noah? Would he have done something like this? The note did sound similar to what he had said when he gave me the flower yesterday. I left the bracelet where it was and hurried back to Blake's room. Just as I was about to enter, Ben reappeared at the top of the stairs. "Hey, you guys ready?" "I am. I was just about to go check on Blake." Blake popped his head out. "Ready. Just let me go grab the camera bag." We hurried to keep up with Ben's excited pace as we headed down the stairs and out to the car. I almost smacked into the back of Ben as he slowed down drastically. I peered out from behind him to see what had caused him to slow down like that. It appeared Nick and Noah had been having a heated conversation. However, both had fallen silent upon realizing we were there. Noah approached me. "Have fun today, and be safe. Oh, and Shelly, remember what I told you." The way he glanced back at Nick after saying it left me with an uneasy feeling. I was glad Nick hadn't seemed to have noticed. I smiled and nodded. As we made our way to the car, Blake leaned in and whispered, "Are you going to tell me what that was about?" "I'll tell you later," I whispered back just as Nick walked by. Once on the road, Ben turned up the music and rolled down the windows. And there it was, that crispness in the air. The brisk breeze, caused by the speed of the car on the open road, kicked up the colorful fall leaves, causing them to swirl and dance as we drove by. They were beautiful. The road we were on now may very well have been my favorite road ever. It was the kind that made you feel as though you had been transported to another time and place. Rows of trees lined either side of the street, coming together to form a canopy of colors overhead. Vintage streetlights and charming benches adorned the open spaces. Out past the trees, farms could be seen, many of which had pumpkins now. "This road reminds me of you," Blake whispered in my ear. I giggled. Although a funny thing to say, I knew what he had meant, and that put a smile on my face. The almost magical charm of this road made me happy too. We continued in this direction for another 10 minutes or so, before veering off onto an old highway. "So, you gonna tell me what Noah meant earlier?" Blake questioned. I saw Nick glance up in the rearview mirror. Maybe later," I replied, gazing back out the window. I felt Blake scoot a little further away from me. When I glanced over at him to see what was up, he remained emotionlessly staring out the window. I could only imagine what he must be thinking. I wished I could just explain everything right then and there, but how could I have said anything with Nick watching my every move? I definitely didn't want to start any drama today, especially as we were about to begin a paranormal investigation. Chapter 6. There was something about the road we exited on that sent chills down my spine. Even the trees seemed darker here, most of which had already lost their leaves. Their skeletal figures cast eerie shadows. That's strange. It's too early in the season for their leaves to have completely fallen off. Maybe things are different out here, I thought to myself. The buildings and barns were few and far apart now. However, the ones we did see appeared to be quite run down. For some reason, this side of Glastonbury Mountain made for a sort of spooky-looking backdrop, far different than the picturesque feel it gave on the side by Noah's house. Although some people still reside here, they say it's mostly a ghost town, Nick said, turning down a small dirt road. The car came to a stop near an old abandoned shopping center, not far from the base of the mountain. This was once a thriving little shopping spot. That was, until people began to realize that the missing persons cases that took place back in the 1940s, where multiple people had gone missing over the span of a few short years, were not isolated events. There were rumors of Bigfoot and UFO sightings, as well as some other outlandish theories being blamed for the ongoing occurrences. However, locals, true locals, that had been here for a few generations, knew it was something far more sinister that lurked in the back roads of town and the trails of the mountain, Nick explained. Far more evil? Like what? I questioned, not fully sure I wanted to know the answer. Like a real-life serial killer and the ghosts of his victims, he replied, turning to look me dead in the eye. Whatever happened to the supposed serial killer? He was never caught. In fact, rumor has it that he eventually went on to trick a woman into falling for him. With her being completely oblivious to the heinous acts he had committed, they went on to get married and have 2 sons. When the boys were in their teenage years, their mom fell ill and passed away. That was the final straw that was needed to reawake the serial killer within him, the one that had remained dormant for so many years. One of the boys moved away, fearing what his father was becoming, whereas the other boy stayed, remaining loyal to his father. It is rumored that their bloodline continues even today, as each of those boys had sons of their own. No one can say for sure what happened to them, but based on reports over the last few years, it seems they're back. I gulped. So, are we out here trying to find serial killers or paranormal entities? I asked, fearful of the response. Nick got a strange look on his face as he stared at me. A moment later, he began laughing. This is a paranormal investigation, is it not? I highly doubt our gear will work on a serial killer. But, he said, pausing and taking several steps closer, watch your back. You don't know who might be out here with you," he whispered with a menacing look. Just then, Blake stuck his arm between Nick and me. "Okay, that's enough. The gear isn't going to set itself up," he said, gently moving me behind him. Nick scoffed before popping the trunk. "Thanks," I whispered in Blake's ear. He nodded, yet avoided eye contact. What was up? Why was everyone acting so strange today? Was it a full moon or something? Nick proceeded to share that we were going to be setting up at the abandoned storefront at the edge of the parking lot, as it was the last spot Nicole Darby, a 20-year-old vacationing hiker, was ever seen. Just across the road from the parking lot was the main entrance to the trails of the mountain. That would be the location where we'd be setting up the other half of our monitors and motion detectors. The body of Johnny Black had been found there 2 weeks after he had gone missing. The girl that had accompanied him on that fateful hike was never found. I had originally been excited for this trip, excited to watch the monitors and meters and see if anything would actually happen. However, now, after hearing all those accounts of lives lost and seeing the locations firsthand, I was beginning to feel a bit apprehensive about it all. There was something about the way Nick told these stories, almost as if he were excited about them, that only added to the nerves that were starting to rise within me. An hour went by of us monitoring the screens, when Nick suddenly hopped up. "I'm bored. Hand me a flashlight. I'm gonna go do a walkthrough of the store." "Here, I'll go with you," Ben offered. "No. If anything is in there, we don't want to scare it away by having too many people go in." "You sure, man?" "Yeah, I'll see you guys in a few minutes," he said, heading for the entrance of the store. We all gathered around the monitors, watching every movement our infrared cameras and motion detectors were picking up. All of a sudden, everything got eerily silent. "What was that?" I questioned as something blurred past Nick on the screen. Just then, something happened and the screen glitched, causing it to become pixelated. There was then a low, almost garbled sound. "You guys heard that, right?" "I swear it said Nick," I blurted out in shock. Ben and Blake's eyes were glued to the screen as the distortion cleared. "No way, Nick probably had something rigged in there," Ben reassured us. We all studied the screen intently, not wanting to even so much as blink, as it now appeared as though a blurry shadow had begun following Nick. It was strange. Every time he turned towards it, it seemed to disappear. More disturbing yet, the shadow roughly resembled the figure of a woman. "You think that's rigged too?" I questioned. "Okay, that does seem a little strange. Let me give him a call. We'll know by the way he reacts when I ask him about it." Ben put the phone on speaker as he dialed Nick's number. "Hi, you've reached Nick," the voicemail started to say. "Well, that's odd. He must not have service in there," Ben muttered, almost as though he were thinking out loud. A moment later, Nick wandered off to somewhere the cameras couldn't see him. We all stared at the monitors, full of anticipation, awaiting his return to the screen. Just then there was a loud bang on the trunk of the car, causing us all to jump. It was Nick, who began laughing hysterically. It was evident he had been the only one amused by his little stunt. After that, we watched the monitors for a few more hours, yet the remainder of the day proved uneventful. After we packed up and began to get ready to head back, we discussed the strange occurrences that took place while Nick had been in the store. He appeared shocked. "Bullshit! You guys are just screwing with me," Nick accused. "Dude, we wouldn't joke about something like that. Watch. You'll see when we play the recording back when we get to the house," Ben defended. Chapter 7. For the remainder of the ride back, there was an awkward silence in the car. Everyone seemed to be deep in thought. I, personally, had my eyes glued to the window. As we had been packing up, I could have sworn that I saw a girl about my age, near the trail across the way. The guys had walked by carrying gear, obstructing my view. However, as soon as they were out of the way, I had a clear view of the trail once again. The girl was nowhere to be seen. I assumed it was my eyes playing tricks on me, as the tall trees cast shadows all around the base of the mountain. After being on the road for a while, I had forgotten all about what I had thought I had seen. That was, until I saw her again. I had to do a double take. Sure enough, it was the same girl as before, staring back at me from the side of the road as we drove by. She had the same wavy brown hair and burgundy top. I couldn't help but think she looked sad, or perhaps it was more of a worried expression that had been plastered across her face. I thought about saying something, but decided to keep my mouth shut, knowing what the guys would think. I certainly didn't want to give them any ammunition to tease me about being scared, as that definitely wasn't the case. As we turned onto the dirt road to head up to the house, she was there, standing amongst the trees. It felt as though she was staring directly at me. Hey, did you see that girl? I blurted out, unable to bite my tongue this time. What? Blake questioned, peering out the window around me. A strange expression crossed his face as he looked as though he were going to say something, just as the car jerked to a stop. Nick hopped out and began running in and out of the trees like a madman. When he got back, he started in. There's nothing out there. Maybe the paranormal investigation should be left to the big boys next time, he teased. Really? None of you saw her? I asked, looking to Blake and Ben. Sorry, I didn't see her either, Ben chimed in. I looked at Blake. As he looked me in the eyes, it felt as though there was something he wanted to say, but he was holding back. Well, did you see anything, man? Nick questioned facetiously. Blake hesitated for another moment, glancing out of the window once more before looking back at me. No, I didn't, he said, leaning back in his seat and averting his gaze. The awkwardness filled the air once again as we continued to the house. I wasn't sure what to think at this point. Had I gotten more spooked by the paranormal investigation than I had realized? Maybe I had, and this was just my imagination playing tricks on me. As we pulled up, Noah was carrying in wood he had just finished chopping. How'd it go? He questioned as we climbed out of the car. Pretty uneventful, Nick responded. Hey, wait, that's not true. You still need to see the footage from when you were in the store. Something definitely happened, Ben corrected. As we brought in the equipment, Ben hooked it up to the TV. No one made a sound as we watched the recording of Nick entering the store. The air seemed to grow colder around us as we came to the part where the scream became pixelated. Sure enough, as I had thought I had heard before, there was a faint but audible noise that sounded as though it said, Nick. Just then, the power cut out and everything in the house went black. There was a gasp, and then a commotion. I jumped as a hand clamped down on my shoulder and a flashlight flickered on. Relax. The wind must have knocked out the power line. The storm is supposed to hit full force by the middle of the night. Don't worry. I chopped extra wood for the fireplace, and we have plenty of candles. Noah reassured everyone. I hated to admit it, but Nick was right. I was now officially scared. The timing of when the power went out and the point that we had been in at watching the investigation was too coincidental for my liking. Here, follow me. Let's get some candles lit for you guys, then I'll start up the fireplace, Noah continued. Everyone fished out their cell phones to use as flashlights as we followed Noah to the walk-in pantry. Once the candles were lit and the fire was going, Ben spoke up. So, about the footage. We all heard it say Nick, right? We all agreed, aside from Nick, who remained staring into the fire. I couldn't help but notice Noah's intense gaze on his cousin. It could have been anything. The equipment was glitching at the time, Nick remarked, attempting to play it cool. However, the look on his face said otherwise. Oh yeah, why didn't you tell us about the girl you thought you saw, Shelly? Ben said seemingly out of nowhere. Ha ha, I snarked, not appreciating his taunting. No, I'm serious. Weird stuff seems to be happening. Best we're all on the same page. Noticing everyone had turned and were all staring, I attempted to push my nerves aside and answer calmly. Okay, well, I first saw her just before we left the investigation. She was near the trailhead. However, when I looked back, she was nowhere to be seen. I didn't think much of it until I saw her again on the side of the road, and then yet again amongst the trees as we got back. Yeah. So, what did she supposedly look like? Nick snarked. Well, she appeared to be about my age, with long, brown, wavy hair, and she had on a burgundy top. Nick and Noah now had identical looks of shock on their faces as they both stared, mouths gaping. What's up? Ben questioned. I'm going to bed. I'll see you guys when the power is back on, Nick muttered, walking away. What was that about? I questioned. Blake and Ben both shrugged. It's not my place to say, Noah muttered, throwing another log on the fire. After that, Noah brought out some board games and made a game night out of it. I was shocked when Noah suggested that we play teams, claiming me as his partner. After a dinner break, followed by several more rounds of the game, Blake announced that he was tired and heading to bed. He wasn't usually one to turn in early, so as he hugged me goodnight, I asked if everything was okay. He merely nodded before continuing up the stairs. I'm gonna go grab more drinks, Noah said before disappearing out of the room. Hey, Ben, has Blake said anything to you? He just doesn't seem to be acting quite like himself, and I'm getting a little worried. It's not like him to keep stuff from me. Ben looked at me puzzled at first. Then, almost as if a light bulb had gone off in his head, his expression changed. I might have an idea, but I honestly can't say for sure. Let me go have a chat with my little brother to see if my suspicions are correct. I'll keep you posted. With that, he hopped up and headed for the stairs. Finding myself all alone, I became uncomfortably aware of the howling wind outside, and the memories of earlier came flooding back. Moving closer, I attempted to focus on the soothing warmth and crackling of the fire. "It's down to just you and me, huh?" Noah laughed as he came back in. "Yeah, sorry to disappoint. I can help you clean up before heading off to bed, if you like." "I didn't say I was disappointed. I happen to enjoy your company. Are you tired?" "Well, no." "Then why do you want to go to bed?" His question caught me off guard. "Well, He let out a little chuckle. "Why don't you stay down here and hang out with me for a little bit? And when you actually get tired, then you can go to bed." I couldn't think of a good reason to say no. "Okay, what do you want to do?" "How about one more round of the game?" After I beat him and we put the game away, he grabbed out what very well may have been the softest blanket I had ever felt. He sat down next to me on the couch, covering us both with it. We talked and laughed for a few more hours. At one point, we heard Ben and Blake talking, and it sounded as though they were going to be heading back downstairs, but moments later it grew quiet again. Finally, somewhere around 1:30 a.m., Noah walked me up to my room before heading to his own. "Oh yeah, Noah?" "Yeah?" "Thanks for the bracelet." "What bracelet?" He looked genuinely confused. Nothing. Never mind. My mistake. Good night." Embarrassed, I slipped into my room and shut the door. With my phone in one hand and candle in the other, I made my way to the dresser to get my PJs. As I set my phone atop the dresser, I froze, realizing that both the bracelet and the note were gone. I shined my light around the room to see if anything else seemed to be out of place. However, everything was exactly how I had left it. Feeling my nerves getting the better of me, I quickly changed and got ready for bed, and then climbed in and pulled the covers over me. I imagined I looked much like a frightened child would. However, I didn't care how I looked. I was frightened. I didn't know what was going on around here, but I didn't want any part of it. It took me far longer than usual to fall asleep. However, just as I began drifting off, the floorboards creaked and the sound of footsteps approaching the door echoed, same as the previous night. They stopped just outside the door, once again, and then there was nothing but the distant sound of the wind howling. I squeezed my eyes shut. "Think about something else, anything else," I pleaded with myself. I lay there listening in anticipation for a long while after that. Chapter 8. I woke the next morning feeling thankful to have made it through the night. That was it. I was going to ask Blake if the offer was still open to sleep in his room. I honestly couldn't imagine voluntarily sleeping alone in this house for one more night if I didn't have to. After getting dressed and ready for the day, I went down the hall and knocked on Blake's door. "Hey, he headed out for a jog a little bit ago," Noah called out from the other end of the hall. "Oh," I replied, a little shocked. Blake almost always checked to see if I wanted to join him whenever he'd go out for a jog. I rubbed my neck. I had fallen asleep scrunched up under the covers, resulting in an extremely uncomfortable kink in the neck upon waking. "You okay?" he asked, nodding towards my neck. "Oh, yeah, I just slept funny," I replied, attempting to mask my pain. "Here, come with me. I can help." "Oh, that's okay. You don't have to," I started to say when he cut me off. "I know, but I want to. Will you trust me?" I'm not sure why, but I did feel like I could trust him. I nodded and followed him down the stairs and out to what appeared to be an herb and medicinal garden. I watched as he picked several plants, taking them over to a small table in the back corner. He mashed them all together in a small bowl with some aloe vera. The aloe was the only one that I had recognized. "Okay, come on," he said, nodding for me to follow him. He led me back up to the patio where he proceeded to sit on the top step. "Come sit," he said, patting the next step down. I sat down between his legs as he gently slid the strap of my tank top off my shoulder. As he massaged the mixture onto my neck, it immediately began tingling. Seconds later, it felt as though it was heating up. "How's that feeling?" he asked a minute later. "Tingly and warm?" "Good. That means it's working." I closed my eyes and sighed as he continued to massage. I'd be lying if I said that it didn't feel amazing. I had been in such a relaxed state that I jumped when Noah spoke again. "Hey, what's up, man? How's the jog?" I looked up just in time to see Blake raise an eyebrow at Noah massaging me. "It was good. Not sure if it was as good of a time as you're having here, though. I'm gonna go hop in the shower." "It was good. Not sure if it was as good of a time as you're having here, though. I'm gonna go hop in the shower. Catch you guys in a bit," he said condescendingly. He walked away, acting as if I didn't exist. What was up with that? Not a good morning, or even a nod. Okay, that was it. I was going to get to the bottom of this when he got back out of the shower. Noah cleared his throat. "Okay, well, you should be good to go." I rotated my neck. How had he done that? The kink was completely gone. Wow! You must have the magic touch. It feels better. Thanks. Happy to be of service. Ready to head back in? I nodded. Inside, we found Ben and Nick eating breakfast. Good morning, I said with a smile. Good morning, Ben replied. Morning, Nick chimed in. Wow, he must have gotten a good night's sleep. He's actually being decent today. As we finished eating, Ben slid me a tourist pamphlet on things to do and see. The front featured a quaint little town, a fountain adorned with statues, and a couple cute shops. We're gonna go into town in a little bit. Wanna come? Sure, that sounds fun, I replied, flipping through the pamphlet. I have to hang back. A neighbor's supposed to be stopping by. Are you sure? We could probably wait a little bit, I questioned, feeling a bit bad about leaving him. Yeah, I'm sure. It could take a while, but I appreciate the offer. As we finished up breakfast, I was dying to ask Ben how his chat had gone with Blake, yet decided it would be best to wait until I was able to get him alone. About 30 minutes later, Nick, Ben, and Blake and I were in the car heading down my favorite road once again. Only this time we were heading in the opposite direction. As I watched the majestic trees with their vibrantly colored leaves passing by the window, I remembered the sweet comment Blake had made to me just before he'd gotten all moody, thus bringing my attention back to him presently. I looked up just in time to catch him staring at me, just before he turned his head to gaze back out the window. So, you went on a jog without me? I said pointedly. Yeah? What's up with that? You usually invite me along. Seems like it all worked out just fine, didn't it? He replied with a coldness in his voice. What is that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just that it worked out fine, like I said. His attitude problem was really starting to get under my skin, and I wasn't sure how much longer I'd be able to bite my tongue. I was distracted as the car came to a stop. I looked out the window, at the cute little town surrounding us. Immediately, the library caught my eye. The archway around the entrance had been designed to look like books, and the newspaper print patterned curtains that adorned the front bay side windows were the perfect touch. I know where Shelly's headed, Ben teased. Hey, shut up. But you're not wrong. The library looks awesome, I replied, laughing. Okay, we can split up then. Let's meet back here in 2 hours, Ben continued. As I climbed out of the car and made my way towards the library, Blake followed. I laughed to myself. Although upset with me for God knows what reason, Blake was still a perfect gentleman, opening the door for me and all. As I spun around to take in the setup of the cute vintage-style library, my attention was drawn to the old newspaper archives and the vintage reading machines that accompanied them. The last person to have used them seemed to have been researching unsolved mysteries in the area. They had left articles all over the table, and even one in the machine. I glanced around to see if there appeared to be anyone that might be coming back for the articles, yet there didn't seem to be anyone around but us. Blake sat down at the table and began reading something as I peered into the eyepiece of the reading machine. As I adjusted it, and the wording came into focus, I learned that this was a more recent case. A 21-year-old named Millie DePaul had gone missing after having dinner with a group of her friends at a local restaurant last summer. It appeared it was a restaurant that they frequented, and nothing had seemed out of the ordinary prior to them parting ways and heading home that night. Millie's purse was later found on the sidewalk, but there was no sign of Millie. As I scrolled down, I had to readjust the lens piece once again for the accompanying image. As the image came into focus, my breath caught, and my heart began to race wildly. There was the girl with the wavy brown hair that no one had believed I had seen after the paranormal investigation. Everything started to spin, and I had to place my hand on the table to steady myself as my eyes were drawn to her wrist. Her bracelet was identical to the one that had been on my dresser just yesterday. What was going on? Blake! I whispered in a panic. He glanced up, giving me a "what now?" sort of look. Grabbing his hand, I dragged him back over to the machine with me. Look, I said, pointing to it. He peered in and then looked back at me. I couldn't quite place the look on his face, so I decided to elaborate. It's her. That's the girl I saw, and look at her wrist. That is the bracelet that was on my dresser just yesterday morning. I was coming to tell you about the bracelet when Ben came and hurried us to go out to the investigation. He was silent for a moment before speaking. Look, I'm sorry, Shelly, but I'm not in the mood to play Nancy Drew with you. I'm sure it was just a coincidence about the bracelet. It was probably just a gift from your little boyfriend. My jaw dropped. Was he jealous? Even if he was, now wasn't the time for that. Didn't he hear what I just told him? I literally just told you that I saw the missing girl, and all you have to say to me is some snarky comment about Noah? Look, Even if what you're saying is true, think about it. It would mean she was no longer amongst the living, so keep your voice down, he said almost scoldingly. He was right, but his words, or maybe not so much his words, but the delivery of them, still kind of stung. I don't know what your deal is or why you're acting like this, but I want my best friend back, I snapped at him. I'm sure your new friend can keep you company, he muttered under his breath. Fine, if that's what you really want, I sassed. I pulled the article out of the machine and snapped a picture with my phone before heading to the exit. As I left the library, I shocked myself upon realizing that I was actually looking forward to seeing Noah when we got back. I couldn't help but wonder if he had any more information regarding the girl, her bracelet, or the disappearance. As I wandered around town, Blake followed several steps behind me at all times. He may have been being an ass, but he was still there to protect me, nevertheless. Alright guys, that's a wrap. Tune in next time for the continued reading of Once Upon a Fall. Good night.